Baby,
What's
here we
up,
go.
everybody? Welcome to the Renewing the Mind podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Sanchez. Joined with me, as always, my dad, Dr. Raul Sanchez. How you doing, Dad?
I'm feeling amazing, like back in the day at NDSU when I was a young
wow.
daddy and used to take Tyler into the locker room. We're talking about the presence of a father today, baby. You already know there's two times to be great: when you're a bison and when you're a son of a bison.
On this podcast,
How
we
about
teach
that,
you how to
Edward?
renew your perspective, move towards uncertainty, and find what's awesome about that in every situation. And just like you said, never forget it. It's two times to be great: when you feel like it and when you don't.
Yes, sir.
Feels like we haven't done this for a while.
Yeah, it does.
Took
It was good to have Mom in here too, because that's a whole new perspective.
Yep. Mom took 1 week for me when I was on vacation. Then we were up in the Dells last Tuesday, and then you guys stayed for a little bit longer, and now we're all back a little bit in the swing of things for a while.
Yeah, that old dance scene is crazy. Like 1800, kids dancing, and you're just running around. Feels like a rat in a maze, just taking orders and just moving to find the cheese.
As fast as you can go. Sweet. Well, hey, if you're watching
as fast as you can go.
Yeah. If you're watching on
Quad you can be.
Facebook, give us a like and share this video if you would. And if you're watching on YouTube, give us a thumbs up, ring the bell, and subscribe to the channel so you can get content as we release it. If you're listening to the podcast, wherever you listen to this podcast, please leave us a review and help us get more people to see and to hear the content we're putting out today. Following Father's Day weekend, we are talking about the influence of a father, influence of a father in the home. Then we're going to go a little bit into absence of a father, and kind of contrast that, what it looks like to have the father, to not have the father. I'm going to discuss that a little bit. So let's jump right into it, man. The influence of a father. I'm going to show some statistics to start us off. And like always, if you are watching this and you got a comment or a question, throw it into the comments and I'll put it up on the screen. If you're brave enough, we always will take someone to hop on the podcast live. All you need is a phone. And you can hop onto the podcast and ask your question live. But we've only had one or two people do that. So either way, throw it in the comments. Let us know you're here. Yeah. Let us know you're watching. Let's check this first statistic out, and then let's talk about it. So,
yes,
the father absence crisis in America. I got this from National Fatherhood Initiative. It says 18.4 million children, which is 1 in 4, live without a biological step or adoptive father in the home. So we're not saying just biological fathers. We're saying a father figure. Research shows that when a child is raised in a father-absent home, they are affected in these following ways. Higher risk of poverty, behavioral issues. One that's crazy is infant mortality. The death of infants is increased, more likely to go to prison, commit a crime, 7 times more likely to become a parent of a pregnant as a teen. Abuse, neglect, alcohol, drugs and alcohol abuse, suffer from obesity, 2 times more likely to drop out of school, and the list does continue. It does say this is not an exhausted one, but any thoughts on that, just real quick?
Yeah, I mean, we often call them. I mean, there's a lot, and we could really have a talk on every single one of those. But like when we talk about the big 5, the absence of a father is one. Kids are way more sad, which then leads to, there's like 7 forms of depression. So that leads to depression. The second one's anxiety. We all know kids have anxiety, and the number one most common anxiety is anticipatory anxiety. Like, hey, this is going to be scary. Hey, I don't know how this is going to go. And that's very normal. So the presence of a father helps just kill those 2. The next one is social isolation. We all talk about this because if you work with kids, you just feel your heart goes out to these kids that are just kind of sad, socially awkward, socially isolated. And so a kid who has so much anticipation that this is going to suck, they go out and the first 2 things, like something happens or doesn't happen, then they socially withdraw. So they're there, but they're not there, right? They show up, parents drop them off at the door, then you find them over in the hallway, you find them out in the lobby, and they're just sitting there bored, don't do nothing, pull their phone out because they know how to withdraw.
Sure.
And then that leads to aggression and school dropout, and then drugs, and there's a whole line. Once they become aggressive, it's literally a downhill slide. And then the two big ones that we always talk about are hyperactivity, impulsivity. So they get tested, diagnosed with ADHD, and then put on medicine. That's just line one. And then we work backwards to try to figure out how do we get them off this train. So that's the big five. Then you can take a look at how many of those fit on here. But these are the outcomes, and these big five are the doors. So they walk through these doors and end up on this big list.
And I just want to say, obviously, these are all statistics, so anyone can break statistics. These are generalities. This doesn't mean that if a kid is lives in a an absent father home, they're going to turn out like this. Obviously, Dad, you are someone who broke all those statistics. I mean, not all of them, because I'm sure you got in trouble a little bit more. You know what I'm saying? And you kind of fit some of these, but for the most part,
more likely to go to prison. I mean, the jury's still out.
I mean, you did commit some crimes, but anyways, okay. So next one, the strength of father's presence. So having the father, children with involved fathers. Here's the flip side of that: a strong foundation for child well-being. They're at lower risk of a host of poor child outcomes. So this is now the increase of all of this stuff happens. It shows basically the same type of stuff that without the father. This one lists suicide, poor school performance. But other than that, it's pretty much the same one. And then the last one is this one, which I thought was pretty crazy because there are several single mothers that are a part of the podcast family. And we got several single moms in our family that are raising their kids and have raised their kids. So why involved dads are good for moms. Mothers reap a host of benefits when fathers are involved during pregnancy and raising their children. More likely to receive prenatal care, less likely to smoke during pregnancy, healthier births, lower risk of postpartum stress, lower risk of postpartum depression, lower parenting stress, more leisure time, higher marital satisfaction. I mean, some of those things are pretty like practical. Like obviously, if you have two people raising a kid, your stress levels are going to go down. But we never really talk about that we usually only talk about, well, the kid's affected, but there's also another adult in that house that is affected tremendously. I know when I've had to watch my three girls for a couple hours and Alicia's gone, I'm like, please come home. How much longer before you're home, let alone doing that 24/7, 7 days a week, 365.
Right. And so when we talk about stress, remember, it's never the actual stress itself. So like if you think about Navy SEALs, like how stressed they are, like they have to go deploy, they have to do some kind of secret covert ops. They can't talk about it. A lot of them have to go through therapy to disengage or, to let go. We call that shedding, to shed some of the pain that they have, and then still got to carry on. Okay. So they actually do better than most people because they have just tremendous intense stress, but they can let it go. So there's what we call recovery skill. So as a team who parents kids, you can tag team. Look, Stacy's like, hey, you know what? I'm done. I'm spent. She's all yours. And that's just one girl. When the boys were here, she'd be like, you know what? The kids have been like a zoo. Can you just take them, do anything? I'm going to take a shower, just take the boys. So, throw them in the truck and go to a park. Yeah. So as a parent, you can take your kids on as intense stress. And then you have another parent with you. You can tag team them and just be like, I need to let some steam off. And then you can go take a walk, or you can go just pay bills, even just like do adult tasks. It helps you to let go of that stress. So I want to make sure that you understand, like it's a no-brainer that single parenting is harder than co-joint parenting. Okay. Yep, I also want to say this, like a lot of parents who are single, like let's say, I know some single dads and I know a lot of single moms. A lot of them aren't there by their choice. Like a lot of times they were abandoned. They were divorced by not their own doing, their own choices. None of that matters. I mean, the idea is they just got left there. That, like my mom wasn't a single parent because she chose to be a single parent. All those issues that are on those lists of, presence, the absence of a father left all these dads broken, which then left them be broken dads. And then so they just left and abandoned us and whatever else. So just understand those are the pieces.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So
let me remove those. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a longitudinal study. This started in 2011 in Canada.
I'm sorry, say that word again.
It's a longitudinal study. So it's longitudinal, like over years.
Okay.
Longitudinal, which means it started in 2011, and then it goes for decades or goes for years.
Love that.
Okay, so they typically study people. They call it T1, T2, T12, whatever. So like at different times they test it. Okay, so this is a study out of Canada. and they started these studying these kids at what they called middle childhood. So typically between third and fifth grade. And they proposed two things. Okay. The presence of a dad will have a better emotional effect on kids. And then the second one was active, positive parenting of a dad, a hands on dad, will have also cognitive and behavioral effects on the kid. Okay. They also predicted that there'll be interaction effects with gender and with age. Okay. What that means is it depends on girl versus boy, and age differences matter.
Sure.
So the big, I'll just start. We always talk about like starting with the end, right? Begin with the end. So I'll just give you the keys real quick. So the presence of a father, that just means a father in the house. They're married, intact, and the dad has a job and the dad is just present. Okay. So what that did is they tested the kids through behavioral forms at school and behavioral forms at home, parents and teachers. And they looked at IQ and they looked at academic performance and then emotional stance and then behaviors. Okay. And then they waited until 5 years later. So that'd be between 8th grade and 10th grade. Okay. And then they retested them, the same forms. Now they're doing in-home study again, and then also at school studies. And what they found is just physically having a dad at home significantly helps girls decrease their internalizing symptoms, internalizing behaviors, which would be depression, anxiety, sadness, withdrawal. So if you think about that, why in the world would the presence of a dad just being home, why would that imprint a young, let's say, third grader, so that when she's a ninth grader, how would she have better problem solving around internalizing disorder? So she's less depressed, she's less anxious, she's less socially withdrawn, she's more socially confident, right? Why? And the answer will be somewhere around that issue of better security, better safety, just feeling better about herself because dad's there.
Yep.
Okay. Years later, we absolutely know that girls get their emotional self-esteem from a dad telling them how beautiful they are. So it's not necessarily like quote unquote sexy, like you have a sexy daughter or something odd like that. It's just if your daughter does really well and you just say, hey, you did beautiful. Your daughter dresses up for, let's say a school performance. Yeah. And you say, wow, look how great you clean up. Right. So you're noticing her looks and you're noticing her performance and you're noticing her changes in visual behavior. So if she gets her nails done, she gets her hair done, dads notice that. Whether or not you say beautiful, you're amazing, you're gorgeous, or whether or not you just say, wow, you fix up great. Okay. So it's not necessarily about their beauty. It's about you notice them. So the best thing I can tell you this, and this is a new thing that especially teenage girls say, is they'll say, I feel invisible. And then when somebody important comes in their life, like a coach or a therapist or somebody or a pastor, they'll say, I feel seen. Okay. Understand that. I feel seen. Okay. Kids walk around through life feeling invisible. Let that sink in. They walk into home. How's your day? They feel invisible. They maybe change their hair, paint their nails. Maybe they do something with their eyebrows. No one notices. Like, hey, you didn't even finish your dinner. I work hard for your dinner. Like, you can't finish your plate. And then they just go back upstairs. And then when somebody notices them, somebody gives them emotional presence, they feel seen. Okay. So let that sink in. The presence of a father helps a girl to feel seen. Now, interestingly, the presence of a dad. So a dad, just a workaholic. He's just home. He's there. He's physically there. That helps the girl. It does not do anything emotionally for the boy. So just having a dad home doesn't do anything for his emotional well-being. He still may become depressed. He still may be an internalizer. He still may be anxious. He still may have social withdrawal. That presence of a dad doesn't do much for a boy. And if you think about boys, right, even grown men, like Ty, when you go see your buddies, what do?
Hang out, do stuff.
You go see your boys, your men, do
golf,
stuff, right?
shoot guns.
So a little boy who sees, it's all activity. So, girls and boys both, they spell love by time. But you could sit down and just cuddle a daughter and she'll feel like you spent her time. And I'm not being sexist. I'm just saying little girls. Okay. And then if you have a boy and you just sit with him, he's like, Dad, let's go play tag. Dad, let's go shoot guns. Dad, let's play Nerf wars. Dad, let's go swimming. And a dad who's just physically present, right, but doesn't do anything with you, that doesn't support a boy.
Sure.
Okay. So they were wrong that it would help boys. They were right that it would help girls. Okay. Now, the second thing they took a look at was what they called positive parenting. And that's anywhere from a dad who gets on his hands and knees. You know, Tyler and I, we had a podcast show. We talked about dogs, which is dads on the ground. So dads who are hands on, and then also dads who can parent using non aggressive behavior. Okay. So you're positive parenting. Okay. And it's actually under the term, it's positive parenting control. So you can gain control of a child or gain control of a situation using positive parenting. No anger, no threats, no aggressive behavior, none of that kind of stuff. Okay. So what that piece did, if you had a dad who was physically present, but also is a positive parenting control dad, that one significantly decreased the internalizing disorders of girls and boys. So now boys who were seen in third and fifth grade, they're less depressed, less anxious, less socially withdrawn, less socially awkward in eighth, ninth, and 10th. Okay.
Okay.
So hands-on dad does change boys' emotional behavior. Okay. The hands-on dad also did something pretty amazing. It increased IQ in boys and girls from, again, like third grade to ninth grade. Okay. And the interesting thing is it did not touch verbal IQ. So when we do an IQ score, it's verbal behavior, right? Verbal skills, and then what's called performance behavior. Performance is nonverbal. So you're doing puzzles, you're doing mazes, you're doing dot to dots, you're building puzzles and blocks, you're using 3D images. It's kind of like you are here, and then it says I have to get to this section of the mall, and you can't pick your pin up off the table. Can you make that happen? Okay. Interestingly, having a dad who's physically hands on increases the performance IQ of boys and girls. This is pretty important because if you think about a dad, dads don't use a lot of words. Like men are typically short on words.
Yep.
On an average day, men will expend 1,300 words a day, whereas a woman will do around 3,300 words a day. Okay, so
Yep.
men typically they don't talk very much, but what they do is they teach cognitive skills, reasoning skills, hand-eye coordination skills, how to fix stuff that's broken, how to tackle a 2D piece of equipment or a 3D piece of equipment, and how to use tools, right? Again, that seems sexist, but it's not. That's just a dad. A dad would be like, I don't know how to explain it, just watch me. Okay.
Sure.
Or like, hey, I told Valencia, her chain popped off. And I said, hey, I know you don't want to touch this because she had she was ready to go somewhere. And I was like, it's messy, but watch. I'm going to show you how easy this is. And she's like,
Yeah,
Dad,
for
I'm not
next
going to
time.
touch it. And I was like, I know, but watch. And I flipped it up and I just showed her how to move it. I'm like, this is one thing. And she goes, oh, it's like a spring. I'm like, yeah, it's like a spring. And then we just popped it in place. And then I cleaned the whole chain for her. And then she was off and running. Will she fix her chain? I don't know. But I just thought that was interesting when I read the study.
Sure.
It's hands-on learning, excuse me, and it's that visual spatial skill. Okay. Now, this is really important because where do their verbal skills come from, right? So that's the other side. The verbal skills come from mom because
Yeah.
moms teach them how to communicate, how to talk, right? How to have long conversations. And that's pretty cool. So listen to this. Okay. The last piece I think is pretty cool. All kids' IQ changed and went up if a dad was physically hands-on and the positive parent. And it's very, very important that you hear this. Even if a dad was in what they called a lower SES category or a lower educational attainment category. So in the very beginning, how you have to balance control on a study is you can't have somebody who, is a millionaire and, has an engineering degree versus somebody who's never graduated high school. It's just the numbers are different. So you have to control for, and they controlled for how long parents have been married, how they communicate, or what they call the conflict scale. They also even kind of measured out marital satisfaction. So there was like whether or not there was sexual violence in there even. So once they make sure there's nothing there, then all couples can be in the study. Okay. So they have to make people in a control group to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples. So there were high IQ dads, low IQ dads, or lower, I should say, high education dads, lower education dads. And if a dad is hands-on, even those kids who have a dad who, let's say, didn't graduate high school or maybe only has like 1 year of college, those dads also increase the kids' IQ just by being hands-on. Okay. The last piece, when they looked at that positive parenting thing, those dads had a phenomenon that they called emotional warmth or parental warmth. Take a guess what they deem as parental warmth.
Maybe like a empathetic.
Like how would a
dad.
dad show warmth?
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
being there, hearing emotions, crying, hearing their problems, the empathy side of a dad, maybe
Hearing. Yep.
listening to it.
Yep. Yep. The ability to hear, the ability to listen, the ability to be approachable. Now, this is really cool because I teach that skill. I coach CEOs, and one of the number one things I teach CEOs is to have an open door policy, because you have to work on the perception that you are approachable. If I can't approach you, it doesn't matter how skilled you are. I'm just not going to ever approach you.
Yeah.
If you are approachable and I know questions. I could go to you, I might be willing to even dive in and buckle down and maybe, triple down my work and be like, well, if I had to go to Raul, I could. But the fact that I can, and he has an open door policy, that shows some emotional warmth. Okay.
Right.
So just the fact that kids knew I could approach dad and he's not going to blow up, that was the emotional, or that's the warmth behavior. Isn't that cool?
Yeah. Sweet.
Right. Yeah. So, all right. So let's have some conversation. Like what hits you? Yeah. What hits the questions?
Here, Alicia put this. I've noticed with Stella, when I give her a compliment and when Tyler gives her one, she reacts way more when Tyler does it. So
is that just because Ty's a dad, or is that because Tyler exaggerates his face?
Maybe it could be both. Yeah, it could be both. Definitely when the flip side of that is true too. I could say things like, Stella, you've made this mistake 15 times or something like that, or why do we always make this mistake? And then she's way more hurt when I say things like that, or like, Stella, how come I can just say one or two words that she'll just crumble. And Alicia's like, she's a emotional girl, you can't say those things. To me it's like, it's not that big of a deal. So I think it goes that idea goes both ways.
Yeah. That's cool. Any other comments?
Yeah, one of the, just when you're talking about that, it's like the one on one side of it is like, okay, to the dads listening, I go, hopefully some of you are out there and you're like, okay, I do that, but I don't do this, or I don't do this, but I need to do that, or where I can improve on. And there, there's changes that we all can make. I just told Alicia this yesterday, that being home now, because we're in that, transition between working for the church and now working for the school. And so I'm home way more than I normally am, just editing and stuff. And I'm having to work on my patience now more than ever. And then the girls are home all day. And so how school gets, or being home from school, it's just everyone's kind of on edge. So I told her, man, it's really been the test of my patience to really not be
right
as just to work on my patience. And so, I see that and I go, okay, I'm really good with jumping on the ground. I'm really good with playing with them. I'm really good with this, but like my patience and my empathy when it comes to, I've told you 20 times to brush your teeth. Your teeth should have already been brushed by now. That's where I got to really, really try to pull back on that, that side of it. So hopefully to the dads watching, you're like, okay, here, I'm doing this and I need to improve here. The other piece we kind of want to dive into is, so we've painted this picture of, man, if you are living in a home where there is no father, it's an uphill climb. So what do you got some tools for that? You got some ideas for, single parents, the mom that doesn't have the father, or what that looks like?
Yeah. So the first thing I want to say is some of the things that they said that's really, really important, that I think just even as like a Siouxland community, we've got to really look toward this. But they said one should be parental leave for dads at companies, because that's such an emotional hit on kids when they're young. So if a kid's sick, dads can take time off, not just moms, because that's actually a socially expected thing. Like, mom's going to come home, and it's just as important for dads to come home and be nurturing and show that parental warmth. The second thing is,
like when a kid is sick at home and has to come home from school and have an empathetic dad. Yeah, that'd be crazy.
Yeah.
That'd be crazy. Huh?
I don't know what you're talking about, because y'all should just
crazy. Dude.
Yeah, wipe your own booty and get to school. Do you have a runny nose? You should be stay home for runny nose. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm just reading the data. Yeah,
I'm just saying, like,
okay. So
there may have been a kid that I knew when they were sick in elementary. They had to like stay in their room. They got their dinner served to them like in prison underneath the door. But anyways, go ahead.
Yeah. So just like when you said like Stella reacts worse to you or better to you or more powerfully to you, that's why I always come up with those confounds, like is it this or that? So when you stayed home from school, I'm like, well, is he faking to play Xbox because he did just get a new Xbox game on Monday? And Stacy be like, no, that would mean he manipulates. And I'm like, well, I mean, how old does a kid start manipulating?
There's a
So
both
I
and.
always played that line. Yeah, and mom always played the warmth. So I'm not saying I was perfect or great.
I was
I'm
still.
saying I was aware.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I
All right,
mean
go
that
ahead.
was legit. Stacy, to your point, Stacy says, like with Tavian toward the end, when Tavian was young, I still played that rule, and Stacy made me change it. So when Valencia stays home, she gets to watch TV.
Of
Y'all
course.
stayed home,
Of
you and Terrence, you
course.
couldn't have any
Of
TV.
course. Of course it changed, Miss Valencia.
She's like, she's sick. What's she gonna do? I'm like, when you're sick, you're in the hospital. Like, what do you? And she's like, you get a TV in the hospital room. I'm like,
Do what we did. You stare at your wall like this.
facts. No, like read, color, draw, bro. Keep your brain busy.
We're
Like,
sick. We don't want to
why
do
you
that.
turn your brain? Okay, there's data coming though. Like when your phone's within arm's reach, your neurons start to die. Literally crushes creativity and brain performance. So
Mm.
I wasn't wrong on that, but that's down the road. I
All
was
right.
wrong on the emotional side of that. Okay, so number two, like even like our community, like here in Siouxland, and wherever you're at, try to look for it. You'll see it. There's mother groups. There's like in town we have MOPS, right? Mothers of preschoolers. There's no dads of preschoolers, right? There's kindergarten roundup with moms. There's all these mom groups on parenting. There's zero for dads. Okay, you understand? And to the mom groups, if you see a dad there, it's because he's a stay-at-home dad, and maybe he's married to a surgeon, and she's out bringing in the bread and he's taking care of the kids. But there should be more of those kind of groups. That's what their articles are saying, because
Yeah.
we need to let people know that that's a normal behavior, even if you're a working dad, or even if you're a stay-home dad, right? We got to have these community for you.
Well,
Now
and
on the other
that's the
side,
older. That's hold on. That's like that older generation though, right? Like that we're trying to
yeah,
break that. That well, the mom stays home and does all the house, and the dad provides, and when
yeah,
dad comes home, he sits in the recliner at night. Like that's part of the
right,
why society is the way it is with some of these absent dads and some of the behavior issues we're seeing in kids. It's like that's what we're trying to break.
yeah,
That's what we're trying to remove from your dad. The dad cannot only just provide
correct,
financially. That can't
correct,
happen.
okay, yeah.
You
So
raise emotional
that those
disconnected
two
kids.
things, absolutely. So those two things are for all dads, okay? Like dad time off at work, dad groups, okay?
Yep.
And Tyler and I have these conversations, like we should start a dad group, but it's just time and effort, all that kind of stuff. But we need to get on it. That's what something that we're moving toward. By the time by the time the end of this year, we'll have something for that. That's really on my heart. Dad community. Even if we just get together and barbecue and go over article or whatever, whiteboard, like parenting, whatever, we'll figure that out. We'll launch that. So stay tuned. Okay, now if you're a dad and you're home, the most important thing I can tell you is the dad provider only. So the PO dad, PO provider only. The dad who just goes to work, comes home, drops off a check, and just says, "Hey, I bring the money, you do the parenting." And then also says, "I didn't have a dad to do that. My dad was a bum. He didn't teach me to show me. I don't know how to do that." Those are all lame excuses. I need you to
Right.
step one step closer to the emotional warmth dad. So the fact that you provide, congratulations, because that still is not every man. So you're doing something amazing.
Hey, you're doing
But
something.
you can grow, right? You can grow. And the idea would be,
Yeah.
how can I develop one system, one situation where I can be hands-on? Is that going to be mowing? Is that going to be barbecuing? Is that going to be dishes? Is that going to be, teaching the kids how to golf? Like, what's one thing I can do to teach
Yep.
a kid something? And let me give you a hint. It's not going to be, hey, this is what I do, so you have to come do it with me. I want you to ask your kid, say, okay, if I took Sunday afternoons and you and I get to do an activity, what do you want to do? And they'll tell you the activity. So jump in where that child's at, and you'll be the best dad of the
Yeah.
year. I promise you.
Their
So wherever
their
you're at,
activity.
move one step. Their activity,
Yeah.
correct? Okay. Now let's get into the idea. Okay, let's say you're a single parent mom, and you're trying to figure out, well, where can I find a role model for my kid? So
Sure.
some of the national organizations like the Big Brother Big Sister program, that's
Yep.
one. Another one would be to get a kid in a youth group, because there are adult leaders, and there's also male, slash role models in there. Like I was gonna
Yep.
say father figure slash role models.
Yep.
And then the other thing I want you to do is get a kid in a sport. And it doesn't matter. The research is clear. It doesn't matter the sport. And by sport, I mean activity. So you could get him in show choir because there'll be men there. You could get him in dance. You could get him in swimming. You could get him in tennis. Tennis is a great racket. Sports are amazing because there's lots of men who will actually step up and teach and mentor and then jump into leagues. Whatever it is that your child is involved in, quickly sign them up, because there's two things that push a kid to be great, right? So one is school and slash activities. And then the other one is parents slash work. So, and I put parents in that chore slide because that's where that's at. So now the other piece is this: if you have a best friend, a female, maybe you meet them at MOPS and you kind of hear that they have a pretty good dad, just ask, put it out there and just say, hey, this might be too much. And you can say no, obviously. Is there a way when your son and your husband go out, could they pick up Joey? And then, hey, I'll pay for a tank of gas. Well, right now, a tank of gas would be like $100, right. But you could be like, you don't have to bring any money. I'll pay for my kids' way in. Yeah, I'll pay for the gas money to pick up my kid and drop back off. Whatever.
2 gallons of gas.
Yeah, and listen, and I coach youth football, and there were a couple families in town. I was the coach, and they came up and asked me, and they said, "Hey, that the game's out of town. It's a 4:00 game. We work till 5. We can't do it, so he's not gonna be able to go." I said, "Send me your address. If I know and I hear about that, I'll go out of my way." And the reason is, my mom was a single parent. If there was a game or practice during the day, I couldn't go unless a coach picked me up or a parent carpooled, or if it was a nice day, I rode my bike. But I need you to know, like, you're not stepping on toes. You're not stepping. I mean, just ask, because I promise you, I would say 9 out of 10 dads will gladly go pick up a single parent kid, because we all get it, right? We all get it. We all want the kid to get a shot, but we don't know, and it feels awkward. So like me as a married man, I'm not going to go to a single mom, a parent, and say like, hey, Mary, let me pick up Joey. To me, it feels weird. Like, does she think I'm hitting on her? Is that an okay situation? But she comes to me or comes to my wife, it just feels different. That's just me personally. So I just want you to kind of be aware. So if you're a single parent mom, reach out. If you're a single parent dad, reach out. I know it's interesting, and it makes it feel like you're behind and you're all that kind of stuff. Most people aren't going to get into the business of why you single in the first place. None of that honestly matters. This is about children, and it's about giving those kids a shot. And as Tyler said at the beginning of this, we're looking at that like, Dad, you broke all those systems. And, we always talk about Dad being a trailblazer or whatever you want to say, but I didn't do it alone, right? I rode my bike to practice that I get to, but it was raining, or like we had travel games up in Sioux Falls. My coaches would actually call my mom and just ask if I needed a ride, because they knew our situation.
Yeah.
But a lot of times I would lean on my grandma, or I'd lean on my great Aunt Jerry. And so I had my grandma, I had my Aunt Jerry, I had my mom, and then I had coaches and family. So don't feel bad to reach out, because even if your kid's an outstanding athlete, nobody's going to get to see that child play if, they can't get to the game. So ask.
Yeah, the other thing, something me and Alicia do is like in those situations, if I feel like, hey, we should reach out, I have Alicia reach out to the single mom, and say, hey, Tyler and I would like to. That's another easy way to kind of get around that as well, the awkwardness.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Yep. That's good.
We're close to 35. What do you got? Anything else?
That was it. Let me check my other note just to make sure. Yep. Oh, yeah. There's one more thing. One last point. Okay. So think about this. So the presence of a dad means a lot, right? Because it can change the emotions of a girl. But it's the behavior of a dad. Okay. The behavior of a dad that changes the emotions and the behavior of boys and girls. So when that dad had the warmth and the hands-on, those kids didn't get any emotional or behavioral trouble, and actually their cognitive skills jumped. So it's not necessarily just the presence, because everybody always says, oh, I just want to be a present dad. Right, that's a good goal, but don't stop there. Don't stop there. That's where you start. Like, nobody just wants to go to play baseball. Like, bro, my goal is to get to first base. Okay, and then what? Right? So my goal should be, I want to be a present dad. And then what? Okay, now I want to be a behavioral change dad. I want to get involved in the kids so I can teach them how to problem solve, because the behavior of a dad changes the emotions and behaviors of both boys and girls alike. Okay. So that's it.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I'll just say to the single mom out there, the single parent out there, you kind of hit on it, that there are communities out there, there are people out there. And then, I'll say this: I've prayed for a mentor from the time I went into full-time ministry was in 2011, and I prayed for one on a consistent basis for a long, long time, and I didn't find someone that I can meet with on a regular basis. I mean, I have you, Dad, and I got some other people in my life, but I wanted a mentor that can really point out the ugly in my life and say, change this, do this, someone that was consistent in my life. That didn't happen until 2019. So for 8 years, I tried it, tested it, grabbed lunch, coffee with all these different people, and it was just a constant prayer in my life that, God, can you provide this? God, can you provide this? So I'd just say, if you're a single parent out there,
Right.
Put that on your prayer list. If you're a single mom, put that on your prayer list. I pray that my son, my daughter needs a godly influence, a godly male figure in my life. If you're a single dad, it's the same thing. Start praying for a mother type figure in your kids' life. And if you believe that, God can heal the paralytic and make the blind see, and God can provide someone for your child. God cares about your kids more than you do. So put that on your prayer list.
Yeah.
That influence of a father.
Yeah, that's good. So don't give up. Just keep pushing, keep praying, keep asking.
Sweet.
Right?
Another
one.
And
I want to say this too. If you're showing up, congratulations, and just keep showing up and just keep showing up, because in the behavioral data, if you show up for 30 days, getting there is no longer a problem for you, right? So keep showing up, whatever that looks like as a parent. Just keep showing up, because that is still making gains. And I use this a lot because it's so important. But Martin Luther King Jr. said, "Hey, if you can fly, fly, right? If you can run, run. If you can walk, walk. If you can crawl, crawl. But whatever you do, don't stop moving." Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Last thing I had here.
Sorry, I cut you off.
No, you're good. I just say last thing I had here was never underestimate the power of a question. If you got kids, pull your kid in, sit them at the table, and say, "How can Dad do a better job?" Stella, what can I do as a dad to improve? And listen without question, listen without no, I don't, or yet, and at the end of it say, you know what, I'm going to improve of that. Here, look, I took some notes. I jotted some things down. That's something I try to do on a regular basis with Stella. And, some of the things are play with me more. And it's like, well, I can, but I can't do it for 4 hours at a time. You know what I'm saying? So,
right.
But the power of asking your kids, how can I be a better dad? How can I be a better mom? What can I do to, is there anything I'm doing that you're not liking? Just have that conversation at 5, at 4, in high school. Imagine, what that does. That brings that parent role, that vulnerability, that untouchableness, like you said, that approachable, man, that brings us down to their level. And really that sparks that conversation to be able to say, man, I'm a dad that's trying to figure this out. Help me out, buddy, or help me out, Stella. Ask the question.
Yeah.
That's my piece of advice.
Yeah. And when you're trying, that's awesome, because when you're trying to problem solve for a kid, we tell them what to do. Right. And that never works.
Right.
Instead, you listen, and they talk about drama. You listen, they're saying, "Hey, I got cheated out of this," or whatever they're saying. At the very end, just pat them on the shoulder, or if you're a hugger, hug them, fist bump them, have some sort of physical touch, shoulder, head, whatever they like. And then I want you to just ask this, like, "Hey, honey, how can I help you?" Right? Even if it's your son. "Hey, son, how can I help you?" Like, "Okay, what would you like me to do with you? How can I help you?" Right? Tell me what to do. So you put them in charge of making the decision. When we tell them, they shut down because they're being told everything 24/7 all day. So now we just become like a teacher who just wants to boss them. Right? So that's a good point. Ask the question, "How can I help you?"
Love it.
Awesome.
Anything else?
That's it.
Perfect. Well, on this podcast, never forget it. We teach you how to renew your perspective, move towards uncertainty, and find what's awesome about that in every situation. And never forget it. Podcast family, there's 2 times to be great: when you feel like
you
it,
already know.
And when you don't. We love y'all.
Amen.
I had to realize what's inside of me. For all of the people that lied to me, for all of the people that said I would fall off. Oh, bro, what a time to be alive. I wrote this for everyone, feel like they counted out. You need to look in the mirror and tell yourself it's time to be who I am now. Greatness.